Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Oh, we're on.
Yes.
We have the sound.
Will you be the skier or the oiler?
I'll definitely not be the skier, but I know nothing about oil. I'll leave that there for now.
Kui te millegipärast ei saa aru inglise keelest, seda võib juhtuda, te olete koolis saksa keelt õppinud või mõnda muu keelt, siis meil on täna siin võimalus otsetõlkeks. Me imelised, ülisäravad, targad tõlkijad asuvad siin selle seina taga, selle ekraani taga. Need ei ole näha, aga nad kuulevad kõike, mis siin toimub ja nemad näevad meid siin laval olijaid. Seega, kui te vajate tõlketeenust, siis meil on seal sünkroontõlke võimalus olemas. Ja peale selle, kui meie kallid Norra eksperdid oma ettekande lõpetavad ja nende ettekande lõpus on natukene aega, siis, ja teil on soov neile küsimusi esitada, siis te saate teha seda täiesti puhtas eesti keeles. Ka neil on sünkroontõlge olemas ja nemad saavad aru teie esitatud küsimusest. Nii palju tahtsin öelda. Aitäh, vabandust.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's really good, actually. The interpretation part works perfectly, which means, but it's a little bit uncomfortable to wear. So we'll take it off now. And if you want to ask a question, just let us know, and then we'll put it on so that we can understand what you're asking. It's a pleasure to be here. We've had such interesting talks with Ria and everybody, or people from Estonia on mediation, both yesterday and in Norway. So we're really happy to be here. And we find Tallinn to be a beautiful city.
Yes, it is. It's much more beautiful than Riga. I've been there. Thank you so much for having us here.
We'll start. Not with our voices, but with the voice of Pink. So we'll just let you lean back and listen and just be aware of what you become aware of.
Every time I see this video, and we usually start off in the first family mediation training program in Norway, we always start with this video, just to set the tone. So,
today, we've been asked to talk about the experiences from Norway, from the Norwegian mediation process, success factors, mistakes, difficulties, what we've reshaped on the way. And we will build on what is quite a body of research and assessments of the Norwegian mediation process. And at the same time, this is me and Susanne. It's our thoughts, it's our highlights, it's what we're working on, because the both of us are both working as mediators and as leaders of other mediators in two of the family offices in Norway. So if you'd asked someone else, you might have gotten different highlights. So just know that this is sort of our points, what we find is most important and what we are most often discussing. We'll put less weight on methodology today. We won't be doing this is the best practice mediation. We want to talk to you about the dilemmas that we meet, the role of the mediator, what often faces us, and our thoughts on how to develop that further. So that's what we're going to be talking to you about.
I've been to mediation myself. We didn't discuss this prior to this speech, but I've been to mediation, and that was like almost 10 years ago. And a mediator, he talked to us for like 12 minutes, and then he kicked us out, and he was finished. We had an appointment, we had an agreement, my ex-husband and I, so we were polite, and we left the room, and we got the things we needed to get separated. But it gave me, as a mediator myself, it gave me not a very nice experience, I would say. because I didn't get to talk. We didn't get to talk what we were supposed to, what we thought we were going to be asked about. Our kids were not introduced in this. They were not even talked about. So it was quite of a, I was quite upset. We were very upset when we left the mediator. And I thought, I will never do that again.
Okay.
Yes. So many things to think about while we're standing here. History of mediation in Norway. We start in the Greek, ancient Greek time. Mediation has been a part of human interaction that has evolved with civilization. And the practice with mediation, as you know, started with the ancient Greek. In Norway, I do a big step. Then we go to Norway in 1918. Then the mediation was introduced as a mandatory for all married couples that considered divorce. The aim of that mediation was reunion with the parts, because society didn't really recognize separation and divorce. And then in 1993, we do large steps here, even larger than Estonia. We got a new law and regulations where the focus was not on reunion, but the children and the future for the children and for the families. We had some changes upon until we got to 2016, and then we got an introduction of a digital material. Lots of the material of mediation is online, and we started to ask questions to the people that wanted to mediate. Questions about when they call to the family counseling office, which is the place the most people go to mediation. The parts are always asked about 8 or 9 questions about the conflict, about the trust they have in each other, about substance abuse, about violence, domestic violence, and so on. And according to what they answer on those questions, we tend to put, if they got a high level of points or a score, then they get 2 mediators, always. So we started with this in like 2016, and that is the practice as by now. Since it's 2023 now, we have had mediation as mandatory in Norway for 30 years. And it's quite surprising. It's very interesting that the topics we were discussing with Rea and someone else yesterday are almost the same dilemmas and things we're struggling with in Norway, still after 30 years. And we think that having these talks yesterday, we think you have come very far, and we're very slow. We must be very slow in Norway. I don't know, but we have a lot of experience, though. We have laws and regulations about mediation. We have 3 acts that are concerning mediation. The first one is the Act of Family Counseling Offices, which regulates our offices, what we're doing. We're doing a lot of other things than mediation. I would have to put that out. Mediation is about 20% of what the therapists and mediators in the family counseling office do. And we have the Act of Marriage, which points out these things about mediation, and the Act of Children and Parents. The regulations are full of practical information and what we need to consider in different situations as mediators. Examples can be like one part is living abroad. What happens then in mediation? One part is too sick to join the sessions, maybe, and so on. And the acts and the regulations, they are complementary and they fit together. And the regulations, it's almost like how can I don't know what you think I'm going to say.
I'm not sure.
It's like a
I
workbook.
couldn't read your mind.
It's like a workbook for the mediator,
yeah.
because we get so many questions that are not regulated in the acts. So we have to pick out and make decisions along the way while we do the mediation, or in the beginning of the mediation. Yes.
And now you were talking about the regulations, the laws, the legislation. But we believe that it's also important for you to know some of the context in which the mediation process is going on in Norway in order for you to be able to sort of translate what we're saying into your context. So we'll say a little bit about that as well, about the ideals of pre- and post-divorce parenting in Norway, so that you perhaps could be able to compare. Is this the same as in Estonia, or is it somewhat different? Because mediation happens in a social context, and it happens in the context of the ideals of parenting and of the view of the child. So, in this field, we have, through these 30 plus years in Norway, seen how the ideals and the attitudes toward parenting, they affect the laws and regulations. But we've also seen how the laws and regulations have affected the ideals of parenting. And in this context, I'm going to focus on two ideals that are often drawn out in the literature. First is symmetry. So since the 1970s, approximately in Norway, there's been a continual process or shift in the views of the division of labor between men and women, and a process that's led us to this ideal of symmetry. These are politically wanted and designed shifts. They probably came from the politicians wanting women to join the workforce because they realized that that would probably make us produce more value. And that has been linked to some of Norway's wealth and social service system, is the fact that both men and women have contributed to the workforce for such a long time. So they organized easy access to childcare. They organized paid parental leave. And then they started saying, but let's do something more about this division of labor, because in the beginning, it would be the mother. In Norway, we have a paid parental leave for about a year after birth. It would be the mother who would take this year. And then from the 2000s, they started saying, well, let's give the fathers a bigger right to this parental leave. And now today, we have an arrangement where 1/3 of the time is for the mother, 1/3 of the time is for the father, and then the last third the parents can divide between them as they see fit. So the idea is also fathers have a right to spend the time and form that bond with their children. And the ideal becomes equal distribution of parental care. Equal rights both in family life and in work life. So we see a development towards more shared responsibility in the home, more division of labor. Fathers report being closer to their children. Children report being close to both parents. There are plenty of upsides to this ideal. And still, it's not an easy ideal to uphold. And it is an ideal which comes with a lot of conflictual feelings, and we meet that probably especially in the mediation room. So I want to cite a woman, Actually, I want to cite here from a character in a novel, but because she pinpoints it. And she says something I think a lot of the women we meet in mediation feel. And she says, "No, this is my child. I'm its mother. There's nothing modern about me." But on the other hand, we have fathers who come into mediation and saying, "Okay, I'm coming here, but I feel the ball is in her court. She thinks she's kind if she gives me right of access half of the time. She would never accept anything less than half of the right of access." So many men now won't accept this premise. They have the relationship with the child that's been formed from the child was really small and that has been developed through symmetrical parenting. So in mediation, we find this push and pull between the ideal and the ideal that makes some politicians now want to say, let's just make it so that the rule, let's make a law that says that the rule is 50-50 division. And these feelings, if you see that we can see in this pink song that we started with, these feelings that are really strong when parents realize how much they need to be separated from their kids now. So that's the one ideal that we're meeting and that we're negotiating in mediation. And the other one is devotion. And that ideal comes from the idea that parents should be invested in their child's physical and emotional well-being. This is strengthened by knowledge from about children's development, and that has been informed to us by literature, by movies, by texts, by information at children's healthcare centers. We're full of it. We know that this is important. So it follows that parents need to put their own interest aside and adhere to the child's best interest. This is easy to defend, and yet it's really difficult as well. It's a hairy goal. So I want to know now, how many here are parents themselves? Yeah, quite a lot of you. And I don't know if you've noticed how intuitive an endeavor parenting is. Especially with the youngest kids, you can have this feeling that you sort of just know with your whole body what they need. Okay, I've been with you all this time. Okay, I know now you're probably tired. Let me put you to bed. We do this intuitively. Okay, you're probably hungry. And that intuition is so closely linked with our own emotions that when asked to decide what's the best interest of the child, I'll listen to my own emotions. And what do we need to do in mediation? We need to help the parents sort of divide their own emotions from the best interest of the child. And sometimes that's really difficult. So I'll give you an example. A mom and a dad coming into my office mediating, and the mom says, "Well, she said to me that she feels that 3 weeks on vacation with you is too long. She hasn't been away from me that long yet. She's not that old yet. I think it'll be too much for her. It'll be stressful, and it won't be good for the two of you." And the dad says, "Of course she says that to you. She knows how difficult it will be for you, and she knows how you will react. So this is just like it was for me when we were married. I would always see what you needed and try to fix that, and I don't want her to do the same." And as a mediator, I have to believe them both. They're probably both right. They're both adhering to the ideal of devotion. They both want what's best for the child, but they have quite opposite views of what that would be. This poses a dilemma, and mediation would be very difficult without this ideal, because we can, as mediators, say, okay, let's try to put your feelings aside and see what's best for the child. And as we've linked to a few We have a literature list at the end. We've linked to a few articles in English on the way. And these, we would definitely recommend you to read these. These are interesting. And in this article that I've linked to here, one of the moms say, I do it for the children, and it's not a walk in the park. This is really difficult for the parents that we're working with. Do you have that clicker? No, I have the
yourself.
clicker. So I also just want to talk to you a little bit about the different forms of post-divorce parenthood. According to the level of engagement, how much they're in contact with each other, how much they're engaged to each other, or sort of how much time they're spending communicating, and according to the level of conflict, the post-divorce literature often describes 3 typologies of co-parenting. It's the conflictual one, it's the cooperative one, and there's the parallel parenthood. So mediation, most of what we write about it, say about it, the ideal is cooperative. The whole idea of mediation is preventing conflict and helping them cooperate. And in Norway, this idea of cooperation stands really strong. It's like an imperative coming from above, thou shalt cooperate. And when that is difficult, perhaps because of feelings, perhaps because of being triggered by each other, it tends to spiral quite quickly down into conflictual parenthood. In working with parents in conflict, however, we've found that maybe the idea of parallel parenthood isn't that bad after all. And we'll come back to that a little bit later because there's been work on that in Norway. There we are.
Okay, then I'm showing you some essential numbers about mediation in Norway. We have approximately 18,000 cases each year. And approximately 31% of those are separating spouses. Those are the people that are going to a divorce, which is picked from the act of marital. And then there are 29% approximately cohabiting couples. They're not married, but they still need to go to mediation. And then 36% are coming to mediation before they can bring the case to the court. And we want to, we always, some of the biggest struggles is among those 36% cases, I would say. Something between 20 and 30,000 children are affected by mediation in Norway each year. And among 75 to 80% of the parents reach an agreement in mediation. These are large numbers, don't you think? I already now have to skip because I see our time is very fast. In Norway, we have both a mandatory and a voluntary part in mediation. One mandatory meeting with the mediators, everyone has to meet for one session. And a high proportion of the mediations end after 1 hour session, without or with an agreement. In these cases, we see more, with the people that do not get an agreement, we see more conflicts and a higher degree of other problems. Examples can be psychiatric issues, abuse, and people to have conflicts that last and last and last, sometimes almost forever. In Norway, this means approximately 3,000 cases each year, which are those really, really heavy ones. And we think that this is one of the main challenges in Norway today. The lawmakers had tried to sort it out, these 3,000 cases, and we want to put more effort into those families rather to the families that try or make appointments and agreements by themselves. Like me and my ex-husband, we made a nice agreement without the mediation's help. So this is just a small little example. But so we have, when people leave the room with or without an agreement after one session, the mediator can offer 3 more sessions and even 3 more sessions after that. So the total amount of mediation is 7 sessions, 7 hours to be all right. High conflict between parents indicates that 1 hour of mediation is too short, but it also is a reason why they don't want to meet each other again for further mediation. There are good reasons that people don't want to meet. With only 1 hour of mandatory mediation, we, as mediators, can only invite, encourage, and try to motivate the parents to come back. And this can also reduce our opportunity to assist the parents in a good way, because we don't have this power to take them back. And this is a big challenge, to reach the conflict-ridden parents. Some studies conclude that the mediators use too much time on information in the mediation room. In many high conflict cases that ended with an agreement, the mediator uses less time on information and more time on adapting the methodology to the dynamics of the conflict, for example, by focusing on communication and relational matters. There are has been big studies in Norway, and there are especially 2 studies in Norway on Norwegian mediations that rules out good news for us mediators. Most parents are very pleased with mediation, and they say that the mediator communicates well, that the mediator is professional, that is good news. The mediator is aware of the children's needs, and the parents report that they get relevant information from the mediator. And parents disagree on the mediation they disagree that the mediation process takes too much time, and they support the idea of mediation being mandatory. So from the perspectives of the parents, mediation seems to function well. The majority is happy or satisfied, but we see that time used in mediation is reduced from the time when we had 3 hours mandatory mediation in Norway, because it was reduced to just 1 hour. And then we see that very many people just join us for mediation for 1 hour. So the goal of increased flexibility has in one way been reached. However, the dilemma remains that in a relative high proportion of 1 hour mediations, no agreement is reached. In about 22% are the newest figures. And these cases have a significantly higher incidence of conflict and other issues such as mental health problem, as I mentioned earlier, and substance abuse and aggressive behavior. Usually one or both parents wish to bring such cases to court. To some extent, the mediator adapts the content of the mediation to the complexity in the case, a useful rationale when one or both parents want more than one mediation. I will say a little bit about, the tasks of the mediator. But when we put it up like this, I don't know if you can see it, it's quite a lot of issues we need to consider in mediation. We have to facilitate the dialogue between the parts. We have to be engaged in the people that are coming to see us. We need to clear out and have a structure in the sessions. We have to balance between the parties. We have to give hope to the parents about this is going to be okay. We will help you. It will be okay for you. We are not going to pressure the families. We don't have the power. Even though I get complaints as a leader in my office, I have 28 mediators in my office, and I get the complaints from the parents that they feel that the mediators has used power to get them to one of the parts to reach an agreement in which they're not agreed in when they leave the building. So the agreement lasts for maybe 5 minutes, and then they get to think clear when they leave the mediation room, and then they just think, what happened now? And then we get the complaints. We have to focus on the future. We have to focus on the children, and we have to give information about possible consequences and implications of the agreement the parents are reaching. There are a lot of ethics in the role of a mediator. We're supposed to be a neutral, and we're supposed not to take a position. And is that really possible? I want you to think about it. It's not a clear answer on that. But the clear answer is that the most clear answer is that we as mediators, we need to be reflexive about what's going on, what's going inside of myself, what is going on in the room, what is going on in the parents and the children. We are experts in general themes about development, about conflicts, but we can never ever be an expert on the children that belong to that concrete case we're working on. The parents, they are the experts on their own situation, and they know their children, hopefully. There are interesting dimensional axes in mediation. This figure is taken from a scientist called Tor Johan Eikeland in Norway. He has one of the greatest contributors to the field of mediation. And he has he makes these dimensions that we need to walk about when we do the mediation. Long-lasting conflicts are present, as we know, in maybe 15 to 20% of cases, and it is often difficult to succeed in these cases. But the fact that we haven't succeeded doesn't mean it is not possible. Many of the parents in conflict wish to succeed in mediation, but they don't really believe they will. Many mediators also don't believe in succeeding when the conflict is high, and they, of course, is even less chance of coming to an agreement. And many mediators give up maybe too early in high conflict cases. Professor Eikeland says that the methodology must follow the dynamics of the conflict. And when the dynamic doesn't separate the content in mediation from the relational aspect, a case-oriented mediation is useless. He argues that mediation varies between two dimensions: degree of structure, as you see there, and the focus on relational or case circumstances. These dimensions are integrated into one model. This model presupposed a flexible approach to mediation where the mediators focus on the particular mediation context while taking into account both dimensional axes, depending on the dynamic in the conflict and changes during the mediation process. The parents shall come to an agreement, but the mediator is supposed to make an optimal situation for this to happen. If the conflict is high, the mediator may have to increase the structure and focus on relational matters. For example, to introduce certain rules in the mediation room and stay tuned into some relational questions. When the dialogue changes, the mediator can loosen the structure. I think this fits well with my experience as a mediator, because if you introduce too much structure, this could harm the process. On the other hand, it might be necessary in the beginning to be high on structure so that you can show the parents what is going on here. So it's going to be understandable for the parents. Another guy called Peder Kjøs has also been doing a lot of researches on mediation in Norway, and he has pointed out a lot of successes in mediation. He is concerned that he means that we need to create a good alliance. I don't think anyone is opposing that. And the very, very first minutes is very important. We need to let the parents talk about what is of their interest. And he posed that we are not supposed to interrupt. I think that is hard because I am an interruptive person, I would say. So maybe I interrupt too early, but sometimes you really need to interrupt because otherwise maybe the one part is not supposed to say anything. We need to try to regulate emotions and the content of teams. The mediator has to work on goals and practical solutions, which could be hard if it's too much emotions in the room. And we are not supposed to invite to competition between the parents. I very often, in the high conflict cases or in the most difficult cases, I sometimes hear the mother saying, when we're coming way out of hand, and she can say, it could be the father, I just do what's the best for the children. And then the other one replies, the mother or the father, and I'm doing exactly the same. And their opinions are so far away from each other. And when they post that, I get like, who is not doing that? And that's one of those big issues that people tend to stick to when it gets really hard. He also, Peder Kjøs, in his material, he also posed that a good time between sessions could be useful. We often use, if we get a temporarily agreement, we can suggest that the parents go home, try it out for like maybe 2 months, and then they come back to mediation. Or 4 weeks or 2 weeks, what fits. But sometimes I think it's easier to get a temporarily agreement that the parents can practice and then come back and work on a more permanent agreement. Okay, I gave you just 17 minutes. That was
We'll
not,
manage.
That was not the plan of the part of the plan.
We'll
but,
manage.
Yeah,
We'll manage.
We will.
We will. And we're moving to from the point of view of the mediator, the role of the mediator, to the point of view of the children. So this is my daughter. She's at her grandparents' cabin, looking over, having a perspective on the Norwegian mountainside. And of course, mediation is a question of how to ensure a healthy living environment for the kids. And in Norway, I think the perspective of the children, I've heard that here in Estonia, you're there already. We've used time. But it has been there, and I think that's one of the success factors, is that we have developed different ways of talking to children and involving them in mediation. However, we definitely experience that this needs to be upheld. In our numbers, we can actually see, I'm not sure that you do, but I'm sure that I do, and I know that happens at some of the other offices as well. We can see that if we've been talking about involving children, how to involve children, the importance of involving children, our numbers on the number of children who have been into mediation talking to us, they peak. And then we start focusing on other things, important things, things we really have to focus on, and the numbers go down. And then we start talking about it again, and they peak, and they go down, and they peak, and they go down. So having to focus on why and how to involve children is really important in order to have that upheld, because we do lose it. So let's look at some of the perspectives on why we should involve children. Now, we have the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child, and that is taken into the Norwegian Act on Children and Parents, saying that children have a right to give their opinion on matters that affect them. And this is the topic of mediation. There are definitely matters that affect the children. However, many mediators and parents find this difficult because they're scared that if the children should come and say something about what they want, they'll be given too much responsibility. If the children come in and need to sort of say, I want to live more with mom or more with dad, they're in this huge conflict of loyalty. How can I choose between my parents? So we want to protect them, and we want to let them be heard. But that may be difficult, and it's something that we always need to work on. However, research from Norway and from other parts of the world suggests that children who are able to participate and state their view on what is important to them. And we often say, it's not, you don't have to say where you want to live the most. But we can ask you what's important to you when your mom and dad wants to make this agreement. And the kids will say things like, I want my teddy bear. I want to be with my friends. I want to not have that bag at school because I don't like it standing there. That's the kind of things that kids will say. And research suggests that the fact that they're participating, the idea of being heard, having a say, that may boost their self-esteem and feelings of worth. So it's important to do so. However, in Norwegian mediation, what the studies have found is that parents and mediators are a bit more concerned with the therapeutic part. So they say we should involve children because it's good for them. It's good for them to have their feelings heard. It's good for them to be able to talk about it with a therapist who can understand, who can listen to it, who can normalize their feelings, who can give them some hope that this is going to be okay. And that is an important part as well. And the studies suggest that that's more important to a lot of parents and mediators in Norway than the fact that they should have a right to give their opinion. And I think that's something we probably need to work on. Now, there's a last reason why we should involve children that has come up in the research that's done on this in Norway, and that is the rite of passage. How bringing the child into the mediation room shows respect for their role in the divorce. It makes it true. It marks the shift in the same way as a wedding marks the shift from unmarried to married, or a communion marks the shift from childhood to youth or adulthood. Being a part of the mediation process may mark the shift from being a family to being a divorced family. And as one parent put it, she said it was recognized that it was their family too, and their lives too that were changed. So I think that was really nice for them. I'm really, really happy about that. But when we're talking about the involvement of children, it's also important to have that, see that in light of the amount of conflict between the parents. And for the families with the cooperative parents, like you were, I think we often do the same thing. Okay, you're cooperating well, so we don't need to listen to the children. You probably do that yourself. And that's probably true and it's probably good, but it might not always be true. And the fact that you're, as a parent or as parents, are pretty good at talking to your children may not mean that that effect on having the right to state their view. And the fact that it might be a good rite of passage, that isn't important. And we do also have some evidence that suggests that when involving children with parents who are in that segment, the green segment there, that prevents further conflict or future conflict. Because having the voice of the children helps parents take the perspective of the children. For the families in the yellow segment, we as mediators must be aware of and make parents aware of how to involve children. On the one hand, the children who have parents who are in this, who have a lot of conflict and they've been going on it for a couple of years already, they may definitely need to be heard. And their voice may lower the conflict. On the other side, it may also increase the conflict because of the parents' hard feelings if the kids don't want to live with them. And at the same time, this is when we really need to talk to parents on, okay, if we bring the voice of the children in, what are you going to do about it? And I think this is one of the things that make us mediators want to not bring children in. Because if you've had the experience of talking to a child, giving their opinion back to the parents, and then having the parents dismiss it and say, we're not going to listen to that. I don't care. I know he says that, but I don't think he means it. That's exasperating us mediator. It's really hard, and it makes us not want to do it. But still, this is something that we as mediators need to work on. Okay, let's move to the red segment, the families with prolonged conflicts. And these are quite few. So if you look at the yellow and the red ones, that's about a quarter of, or 25% of the families that come to mediation. And then of those, the red part is 10 to 15% perhaps. These are the families that often go to court. This is where children live with the toxicity of conflict. And I noticed that one of the questions that came from you for us was, how are these children managed in court? How was the involvement of children managed in court in Norway? And there's been a huge development on that. I was just last week at a conference in Oslo where they were working with, where they were inviting different parties working with child custody cases. And there is now a level of awareness in judges, in lawyers, on how our whole role is to help the children in these cases and not help the parents in conflict. So there are guidelines that are developed by the court, which I find are really nice and which I'm looking forward to working further on. And for those cases, those red cases there, some of our colleagues have developed a therapeutic method. This is a clinical therapeutic method, so it's not really a mediation method, but it's so close that I wanted to have it here anyway, which is called Strengthening Children in Two Homes, which is really working on that parallel parenthood. So what they're focusing on is strengthening the child. What's it like being you? What do you need? Strengthening the child and parent relationships in both homes. So the child and mom, and the child and dad.